Hello and welcome to Lion and Mouse Commentary. I'm Tori and this is my best friend Holland.
Hello.
If you're new to our show, we rank various forms of entertainment by different categories out of a total score of 10, with only 2 points allowed for our personal taste. We'll break down everything as we go, so it won't be confusing. Feel free to agree, disagree, or just learn about something new. Just be sure to tread lightly, because there will be hot takes and spoilers ahead. Cut to the intro. Okay, welcome to season 4. Thank you for being with us so far on this journey.
Yeah.
Decided on a great topic to kick off the season 4, and I chose Camp Rock, the cult classic, for us to review. This was familiar to me. Blind to you?
I think so.
Okay.
If I had seen it before, I purged it from my memory. So
if this is new for you, here is some background before we get into our scores. So, Camp Rock was released June 20th, 2008 on the Disney Channel. It was directed by Matthew Diamond, screenplay by Karen Gist, Regina Hicks, Julie Brown, and Paul Brown, produced by Kevin Lafferty, composed by David Kittay. I don't know. Running time of 99 minutes. It stars Demi Lovato, Joe Jonas, Megan Jett Martin, Maria Canals Barrera, Daniel Fathers, and Allison Stoner. Here is the synopsis from Google, because I always like the Google synopsis because they're very funny to me. Mm-hmm. So this is the Google synopsis. A teenage girl desperately wants to spend her summer in a rock camp, but the only way she can get in is by working in the kitchen. When a teen pop star overhears her singing, he sets out to find the girl behind the voice. So Camp Rock premiered on the Disney Channel in the United States with 8.9 million viewers on the first night, being the second most viewed Disney Channel original movie at the time, only behind High School Musical 2, which came out in 2007. It showed on ABC on June 21st and had 3.4 million viewers, and its June 22nd showing on ABC Family had 3.73 million viewers. So those first 3 days, they were bringing in the numbers. All of the tweens were very excited.
I like how they put it on ABC so the peasants without Disney Channel could watch it.
Yeah, I mean, they did.
I did not have Disney Channel growing up, so I was one of those peasants. Although I did not watch it when it came on, but...
So the album, like the soundtrack album, reached top 10 in 6 countries, among which peaked at number 3 for 4 weeks on the US Billboard 200 album charts, selling over 188,000 units in its first week. It also topped the soundtrack chart in the US. The album was certified platinum after selling 1 million copies in the United States. So the soundtrack for this movie is certified platinum.
Yeah.
So with that said, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Well, this highly acclaimed movie. Mm-hmm. All right. So if you're new to our season or new to our show, welcome to season 4. So our first category for movies, if you're new, is plot and story delivery, and any musical is kind of included in this as far as the content of the musical numbers, because that kind of helps move the plot along. However, we're a little loose on that, so we might talk about the music in plot, or we might talk about the music in aesthetics, because depending on the quality of the music, things like that. So it's kind of up to our own interpretation. So for this category, we have a total possible score of 2. I gave this half a point out of 2, and I think half a point is extremely generous. The biggest reason that I gave this any credit at all is because it's in the context of a TV movie, a cable TV movie specifically catered to kids.
Yes.
I think half a point is generous to fair. My biggest question is this a movie for third graders? And I feel like the answer is probably yes, it is a movie for third graders.
Yes.
Which, how old are you in third grade? In the US,
8?
like 8,
9.
8 or 9. Yeah. So, the whole movie, the plot of the whole movie, I feel like is extremely thin. I feel like it could be a 30-minute short film. It's just a very thin plot. I mean, literally, you just heard the whole plot of the movie is a girl wants to go to a music camp, ends up working in the kitchen, so she's like this Cinderella-esque theme, and then this amazing pop star who's actually a jerk the whole movie, but we'll get there, hears her sing and wants to find this girl with the golden voice, which is like Cinderella and the Little Mermaid rolled in together, and then there's a competition at the end, and wow, everybody has a happy ending, singing and dancing along the way. I just think all of it just sounds really corny and hokey, and it is. And that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're just watching a movie for entertainment and you're 9, but kind of have to be a little more critical in this part of the review.
Part of this show is that we are 2 adult grown women, and we analyze media as subjectively as we can. Objectively as we can. But we also have to put it within the context of why it was created.
Right.
So
a lot of issues with this movie. One of the things that is like a repeated problem I have with this movie is none of the food is eaten in this film. A big key of the plot is that the main character's mom is a cook and has a catering business, and we don't watch anyone eat her food for the entirety of the movie. So which leads me to question her food probably isn't that good. And the food that are served are things like raw spaghetti noodles with no sauce.
Not raw, just plain.
Cooked plain spaghetti noodles with no sauce. And all the students in the lunchroom are carrying around empty plates. Her daughter at the beginning of the show is like, "This omelet's great, Mom," and never took a bite. So like, it's like a big plot of the movie. I feel like it's ragged on that people in TV never actually eat the food that's in front of them. And I get it. It's a logistical thing in filmmaking, but when you've integrated into the plot that the mom character is a cook and that's how she got her daughter a discounted tuition for the camp, it was just a little silly to me. Also, the main plot is that the mom, because she's contracted to work at this camp for her, that no child is paying for their camp tuition. Even if they're raising the money and paying for themselves to go to camp, a parent has to register you for camp.
Yeah.
So her mom is registering the child for camp, and her mom is getting a discount because her mom is an employee now. She's getting an employee discount, but then requires her daughter to work at camp. This is like, got to be some kind of child labor law violation here.
Yeah.
It just didn't make any sense. This kind of like subsequently running plot with Joe Jonas as this like stuck-up, arrogant pop star is just like a really dumb plot overall. I feel like they just threw the Jonas Brothers in there because they had the star power and to get people to watch it. And then only one of the Jonas Brothers is in it, and he's completely unlikable for the whole thing. Like the whole plot of him, like, I'm going to camp and I'm going to rediscover who I am and play acoustic guitar instead of asking for caviar in my cabin. Like that whole plot, super thin and super like lame. And there wasn't enough believable screen time for him to like even have that be a plot. So you could have thrown that whole thing out. Just like, don't make him a jerk, and then you can just like kind of make this about like Mitchie, the main character, instead of about Joe Jonas for like a quarter of the movie, but it's not even like well developed. I already talked a little about the Little Mermaid voice trope. This whole plot where Mitchie like wants to hang out with she gets like invited into like the Mean Girls crew and she wants to sleep in their cabin, and then she ends up like lying to her mom about different things. It's like the Mean Girls trope. We already had Mean Girls. We just threw it into Camp Rock as well. With the Mean Girls trope, like their whole like mean thing that they do is try and like poor shame and mom shame Mitchie in a public setting in front of a stage. Like, so unbelievable. I mean, kids are mean, don't get me wrong. Like, that is a real thing. Like, kids can be pretty mean about like who you are, where you come from, what your parents are, how much money you make, like in that kind of middle school age. But the context of it was just so like corny and unbelievable. I also think that there's other tropes, like the fact that Joe Jonas finds Mitchie like attractive. He's like, nobody's ever stood up to me like that before. Like, that's a trope. I'm
not like other girls.
You're not like other girls. And then he's like, but I thought you liked me for me, and turns out you just liked me because you thought I was a star and you just used me. Like, that's a trope. The Cinderella, her voice being like the glass slipper or like the Little Mermaid, that's a trope. The whole part about the like romance-esque plot where Joe Jonas is like to Demi Lovato, like, you're the only one that understands me, and then they have this like third act breakup where he's like, you lied to me this whole time and I thought you understood me and you got me for me, and then it's like they have this third act breakup, and then all of that happens, and then Mitchie is still in the cabin with the mean girls. Like, why did you not just go back to your cabin with your mom?
This is awkward, I don't want to be here anymore.
Right. Why are we still sleeping in the same room with them in this awkward setting? I was a little bit surprised that at the end, like the talent show at the end, they did not do this trope. It was the one thing that I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And it didn't. I was surprised that the two girls that get banned from the talent show at the end, that they didn't like find a way to sneak on as like disguise themselves as these fake people, and they're like, just kidding, it's us, and then do like their final
backup
numbers
dancers for Tess, and then they're like, just kidding.
Right. I feel like that's a really big trope in like kids TV shows and kids.
Is the sneaking?
Yeah. So I'm surprised they didn't do that. And then they did their kind of like last performance at the end after the talent show was over, and then Joe Jonas completely hijacks the whole performance. It's like, dude, you've talked this whole camp about how amazing this girl's voice is, and then you're gonna sing on top of her the whole time. It was just so bizarre. Like, this whole film.
When I said your voice was amazing, I meant it would be amazing with mine.
I mean, that it would make me sound amazing if you would accompany me. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was so predictable. It was just like nauseatingly predictable. The one thing that I feel like it started, the one thing that I felt was a nice take in this plot was that Tess, who's like the mean girl, like, I kind of liked that she's mean to just be mean. Like, she's just a mean kid, and like, we don't have to have any kind of sympathetic backstory until right at the end, they like have her mom show up and they pull out the like, I'm mean because my mom neglects me. And it's like, although that is true, that is sometimes a motivation of why people are the way they are, but I don't think we need a sympathetic backstory to just add another trope into the plot of this film. And so it just didn't balance very well, that there were so many of these like cliches throughout the entire film, and over half of them were just completely unnecessary. And I think that even though that's a big cliche, it is kind of refreshing that some kids are just mean. And her relationship with her mom kind of in there towards the end, they kind of like sprinkled it in at the end. I do kind of like that it explained it and it didn't excuse it. And they didn't have this moment at the end where, like, you know, in well, this can be a spoiler if you haven't seen High School Musical. Do you know at the end of High School Musical when Sharpay at the end tells Vanessa Hudgens, she's like, break a leg in theater, that means good luck, and she has this like big switch, like this oops I've changed moment, where she's been like really mean the whole movie. Like, I like that we didn't have that moment in this film. Like, she doesn't, you know, come around at the end and like become best friends with our main cast. She's just like still the bully at the end. So I did think that was kind of nice because it's just a little bit more realistic. But I also feel like we didn't really have any room to kind of do more than that. Another reason that kind of the last thing I'll really touch on, I also thought it was funny the dad disappears after like one scene. It was just kind of funny to me.
And he just shows right back up at the
end.
And
then he's like pops up at the end.
I also exist.
Right. Yeah. Oh, it was kind of funny.
He had the whole summer laying around at home by himself, I guess.
Yeah. I think that this movie, it's a musical, but it's not really a musical. And I don't think that's necessarily a pro or a con, but in thinking through like the plot of this movie, none of the musical numbers really move the plot along at all. It's either a performance number for the camp or it's two characters having like a jam session. And so, and then some of them are just really long dance numbers. They're not even, the dance is like a class that they're taking, or so it really was like a musical, but it wasn't a musical at all. And I guess you could argue, well, the High School Musical did kind of the same thing, but I felt like it fit in the context of High School Musical a little better. And the songs still gave you insight into like who the characters are or what's going on in kind of an internal monologue or things like that. And aside from like the one or two musical numbers that's like supposed to be an audition, it's even those songs in High School Musical still kind of move the plot. So I felt like this was a very weak film trying to ride the coattails of High School Musical. It's like, okay, instead of setting a musical in high school theater group, let's set a musical in a band camp, which is not necessarily, on the surface it sounds good, but I just felt like it wasn't executed very well. And some of the musical numbers are so long, it made the pacing really, really slow and really laggy. And like the one song that Joe Jonas and Demi Lovato sing together and he's like playing on his acoustic guitar, I was like, he's literally going to sing like 3 verses and a bridge and a chorus after every verse. Like he sang a whole like 3 to 4 minute song, and I was like, this is so long. Like even musical numbers, if there's more movement on screen happening for you to watch than a guy playing guitar and singing at a 3/4 angle to the camera.
Right.
So either they were just, they gave us no insight, or they were way too long. So I thought that they were kind of problematic in the sense that this could have not had any music and it would have been the same. Like none of the songs really contributed to the plot at all. And maybe I don't think that was intentionally designed that way. I think it was just a misstep in how you kind of structured your songs into your like movie musical. Sure. So again, I really don't have a lot of positives. I just feel like in the context of like who this movie is for, I think the audience it's very clear who the audience is. And so for that, I can't give it 0 points, because I think in the context of like, you know, a 10-year-old, they probably thought this movie was fantastic, or even like, you know, early middle school probably really enjoyed it and, you know, accepted and appreciated the movie for what it was. But
fair enough.
0.5 point out of 2.
Okay. So for me, for plot and story delivery, I also gave this 0.5 point out of 2 because, okay, disclaimer, I love Camp Rock. I'm not gonna lie, but this show,
you love Camp Rock?
I do. I love Camp
all the way
Rock.
to love.
Yes.
Wow.
I knew some of the dance numbers growing up. Okay, I love Camp Rock. I have also been a Jonas Brothers fan for many years. So it's like, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, like my faves in a new Disney movie, and like I loved High School Musical, and so I was like, oh, I just love that Disney's doing like musicals now for Disney Channel original movies. Like it was prime time for me growing up, right?
You were hooked.
I was. It was like I was the demographic, okay, for these films. But I'm a grown up now, and I can understand and admit when things are not great. And this is not one that I would consider like super great media. This is not a work of art, okay? It's just not.
I mean, arguably it is, though. It may not be good art.
Yeah, true. I guess that's true about everything, right? All media. So 0.5 point out of 2. I am probably not going to talk for a very long time because a lot of my points were yours, especially with the list of tropes. I think the 2 biggest ones are the Little Mermaid trope, like the girl with the voice. I'm going to search everywhere for this girl with the voice, and I'm going to get other people to help me find the girl with the voice or whatever. And it's like the obsession or whatever, and then not realizing that like she's so close and you just don't know it. It's like, she's right there in front of you, big dumb idiot. You know, it's like that kind of vibe, you know?
Is that what you said when you were watching the movie? When it came out?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Also when I watched The Little Mermaid, probably.
Uh-huh.
So, that is definitely a big one. The mean girls trope, I think, is the other like big one or whatever. And the fact that I'm pretty sure every single conflict in this movie is self-inflicted, which to me gets tiresome as a viewer, because by the time you're in the halfway point, or at least the last act, you're like, oh my gosh, can you please just not? And then you wouldn't have these problems. And so it feels, when every conflict that arises is self-inflicted, you know, like Mitchie, she just lies to everybody about like who she is and where she came from and her background and her family and who her mom is, and like she acts embarrassed to know her mom, you know, when her mom does like come out to like greet some of the campers in the dining hall or whatever, and she acts like, oh yeah, I know who you are because I'm so famous, but I'm not gonna. So like she builds this web of all these lies or whatever, and then she acts like so like devastated when her lies become unraveled or whatever. But then you're like, you could have just not lied,
right, to begin with.
Like that, this is your fault. And like, it's very hard in that way. And I'll talk about this more in characters, but it's very hard in that way to like root for your protagonists when they're causing all of their issues to themselves. It's one thing to have like the bully. Okay. So you have Tess, and so maybe one or two of the smaller conflicts are inflicted by somebody else onto your main characters. But really, if you think about it, every bully-esque thing that Tess does is exacerbated by Mitchie's lies, because she wants so badly to be accepted by the bully that she'll just say and do whatever, include, you know, being mean to Caitlin or lying about whatever or sneaking around instead of just acting like a normal human being. Like all of these things they kind of stem from the fact that Mitchie wants to be accepted by Tess, not so much the fact that Tess is a bully. Like all of those conflicts stem more from Mitchie than they do from Tess. Tess just happens to be sort of the caricature of the mean girl bully, and she fits that role well in the sake of like the plot. I agree that the character of Shane Gray is almost not necessary, because he doesn't really, so he kind of has like this growth, but we don't really get to see the natural progression of that growth. It's almost just like he shows up to camp and he's like, I'm Shane Gray and I'm famous and I can do whatever I want because of that. And then by the end, he's like, you're just so great and I'm so glad I got to know you. And it's like, we don't see a lot of like, why all of a sudden.
Yeah, how'd you get from point A to point B?
Yeah, it's like they have these little moments like Shane and Mitchie, you know, where they're like in the boat, like kind of being flirtatious and like ha ha ha, and like, oh, I'll listen to your song or whatever. So it's like they have a few moments, but they're not based in enough like character growth for it to really make sense how they went from point A to point B. So it's almost like there's an implication that they have gotten closer and understood each other and opened up to each other more that we don't see, but then that doesn't make the growth satisfactory, because then we can't really buy that it happened. We didn't see it. So if the character growth is an important part of Shane's like plot or that subplot of the movie, please let us see enough of it that we can at least buy into it, because we can't really, unfortunately. I agree that every song is too long for the movie edit. Obviously, since the soundtrack is going to go platinum, we could just listen to the full songs on the soundtrack. You
Right.
could have a movie version, and a lot of musicals do that. It's one thing if you're like, oh, this is, you know, the movie version of West Side Story. Like, okay, but also when you think about it, this is not, like you mentioned, this is not the kind of musical where the songs are literal story notes that are delivered via song. They're just performances that the characters are doing at their rock camp, because that's the setting of the film. So it really doesn't feel as much like a musical as it does a movie in a musical setting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it feels, and so it makes the songs feel too long because of that. This whole movie is very shallow overall, but the reason that I'm giving it half a point is because kind of your reason, like, this is made for children. And number two, if you can disconnect the critical thinking, it's just kind of fun to watch. Like, it's silly, yes, but it's easy to follow for the most part, and it's fun to watch. It's good entertainment. It's something that, like, I can put on in the background while I'm folding my laundry, and I don't have to pay too much attention, but, like, it's still fun when I look up at the screen every once in a while and I catch a few minutes of, you know, whatever's going on. So I think it's unfortunate that it's really not a strong plot, but I don't expect it to be. So I can't hold the fact that it's not great against it too hard when I never went in expecting it to be good in the first place. It's just here to entertain preteens. And I think it does that pretty well. It's obvious it did. It's as successful as it is. People are still talking about it today. I think that for that like facet of storytelling, it's not good, but it at least captured the attention of the people it meant to. So 0.5 point out of 2.
Alrighty. So our next category is characters. So total possible score of 3. I gave this 0 out of 3 for characters.
All right.
You touched on a lot of the points that I think attribute to the characters. So there really is not a lot of growth. We don't understand a lot of motivation behind the characters. Things like that. I specifically with our main character of Mitchie, I think, like you touched on, anytime your protagonist comes out of the gate and we see maybe like one interaction with her and her mom, and then basically the next interaction that we see of her in the film to give us insight into who she is her just composing a web of lies, immediately makes her unlikable. We can't really root for her. We can't really respect her. You know, we set up that she has this good relationship with her mom. Now it'd be one thing if we went like super dark and her relationship with her mom was terrible. And so she's like, you know, it's coming from a place of like a poor or negative, you know, relationship. Again, I don't think that would really fit this movie, but at least we would be like, oh, okay, she and her mom don't get along, so she doesn't have any
strained relationship already. Right. Yeah.
But we just watched her have this good relationship with her mom. Her parents are super generous to send her to this camp. They're giving her this great opportunity and fulfilling a dream of hers, and then her response is to just lie. The whole time, to lie to them, to run away from her mom, to not stay in her cabin, and to basically try and be best friends with the most unlikable bully of the camp, and then get involved in a semi-preteen romantic relationship with a character that is an absolute jerk. Mm-hmm. This should be a cautionary tale of like, you take your kid to camp and it corrupts them. They become morally corrupt. Like,
the moral is to the parents: don't send your kids.
Don't send your kids to rock camp. Like, but it's not. That's not the point of the movie. We're supposed to be rooting for all of these characters and liking all of these characters and wanting them to succeed and wanting them to get together. And I feel like we have no basis to do any of that for these characters. Her best friend is the mean girl. Her romantic interest is this jerk. Her best friend like turns tail as soon as like she finds out that she lied to her. She's like, well, we're not friends anymore. Like, how can we root for any of these characters? And I feel like that's a huge problem when you can't root for anyone. They all are so completely unlikable. And so that alone would give me a reason to just completely negate it. And on top of that, it's not like that was the foundation we started with, but watch all this growth and change as these people undergo hardship. There is no hardship. There is no conflict. They're not pressed against anything. They just wake up one day and they're better people. And it just, I mean, that's the root of your characters. That's what you need for characters. You need to have something to relate to with them, which Mitchie has nothing. She's a blank slate. She's like a self-insert character. And she has nothing that we can really relate to with her as a viewer. And then the character we do know about her is unlikable. She has no growth. And then she gets a happy ending, not for anything that she has done to like grow or change. And that's kind of like the core of all of these characters. But a couple more specifics I had. How did Joe Jonas, he became an obnoxious diva in 3 years. He's been famous for 3 years, and he immediately became this obnoxious diva. No, he didn't become an obnoxious diva in 3 years. He was not a great person before then. obviously. And then he's like, his uncle says to him, "That's not who you really are." And then he goes to, "I want to play acoustic guitar now." And then he's immediately back to being a jerk when he finds out that Mitchie lied to him. It's like, so what was the point? I thought he was going to grow and change. Like, nope, he just immediately flips, right? The switch flips him back to being a jerk.
So we know what default mode is, obviously.
Right. It's him being a diva. Caitlin, is she a friend or not? We can't really tell throughout the whole movie. When they just meet straight out of the gate, it's like we can't tell because Mitchie chooses to like associate with this mean girl, Tess, for the whole movie. And like that's where the cabin where she wants to stay in and she wants to hang out with her and be part of her little group ensemble and all that stuff. And then Caitlin comes in. It's like, well, hold on. Is this like a real friend who's trying to be your friend? They just met. So how are they friends? We have no reason to know why they're friends to begin with. And then there's no like, will they, won't they of like, who is Mitchie going to choose to be friends with? Like the bad character or the good character? But Caitlin's not even really a good character. She's kind of this weird, neutral, gray, boring character. And so I felt like I couldn't even get on board with that. The adults, I feel like they're just there to really give the kids a pick-me-up, like the uncle talking to Joe Jonas, and Mitchie's mom is like, "It's okay, kid, you can do it." Like, I mean, that's like every adult. They're not there to actually be adults. They're just there to tell their kid, "Don't worry, you got this." Like, you can do it. Believe in yourself. Like, they're just really boring, but at least they're not like the dumbest person in the room.
True.
Tess is... Actually, her acting is not really terrible. Again, I kind of touched on, I liked that she's kind of mean to just be mean, but then she has this like, actually have sympathy for me. And then she's kind of like, well, I'm just not going to be mean anymore. Like, you know, it's just a very weird like dynamic in general. And I don't see any reason why Mitchie would want to be her friend. Like, she's so clearly out the gate, like, rude and obnoxious and mean. Like, why is our main character falling in with this person? I get that that's kind of a real thing that happens, like in the film Mean Girls. Or the Broadway Mean Girls, which if you haven't watched it, go back and listen to that episode. But shameless plug for, like, season... Two? I don't remember.
Or maybe early season 3. We don't remember after we upload these.
Yeah. I think it was season 3.
I think it's early season
3. Season 3. So go back and listen to season 3. You can hear our take on Mean Girls. And then the other thing is like none of these kids act like... No kids act the way these camp kids act. I think the acting in general is just so over exaggerated and corny. Like it's like the classic like Disney Channel like bad acting. But then the way that these kids behave is not. I've never seen any kid behave the way that these kids behave. They're like banging drums on a bus and like doing backflips in the middle of like something and then standing there quietly like with no lines. Like it's just like so jarring. It's like watching the Sims like at camp and like banging on stuff, the way they dance around. I was like, man, even the extras, like the ensemble members, it's like this is like uncanny valley, like watching some of these kids. And so even your background characters and your minor characters, you're like, where are we right now? Like none of it seemed like, it doesn't flesh out the world. It just feels really odd. So I don't really have a whole lot more to say than that, but and then like I don't understand why the younger Jonas Brothers even get credit in this movie except for their one musical number that they do in it. Like they're at the beginning to be like,
oh, you just mean the other two?
Yeah,
because Kevin's the oldest, but he's not present for most of the film.
Neither of the two other Jonas Brothers, other than Joe Jonas.
I just got confused because you said youngest, and I was like, what?
Oh, I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. My brain was just like, what are you saying right now?
The two other Jonas Brothers are like not in this movie at all, and I don't understand that at all, because I feel like if you're capitalizing on the Jonas Brothers' success, which they were successful before this movie came out, so they're like your A-list stars, like, so like come in and carry
like the big tween pop stars at the time,
and then you only have one of them in the whole movie, and then you make the other two dumb bumbling idiots who come in and play guitar once and then leave. Like, what was the point of having them in this movie? Just so you could say the Jonas Brothers are in this movie.
Spoiler alerts. They're much more present in the second movie. They're at camp the whole time.
Oh, I forgot there was a second movie.
I'm just kidding. Season 5. Here we go.
You're gonna pick it for next week's episode.
No. Maybe.
So anyways, so 0 out of 3.
Okay.
I feel like your characters are supposed to carry the movie and these characters do not. So
Okay.
0 out of 3.
So for me, for characters out of 3 points, I gave it half a point. And I'm going to just tell you right off the gate, it's for the adults in the film.
Okay.
That half point. And sure, you could argue, of course, adult actors are going to be better actors. Not necessarily. We have watched and reviewed many, many, many good films with children actors that just crush it. So that's not a valid argument here. I understand it's Disney Channel, and so you're going for like a specific sort of vibe, and that includes like some goofy acting. So like, I'm not trying to say that like I expect Camp Rock to have the same level of acting as the kids in Super 8 do.
Right.
I'm not trying to give that comparison, just to say that,
Which, shameless plug for season 1.
yeah, very first episode ever. All of that to say is that I don't think that adult actors automatically mean better actors. However, in this film, it certainly does, because you actually have a level. I think the biggest thing is that with the adult characters, which there's really only 2 adult characters that are present for most of the movie, and that's Brown, who is the camp director, and Mitchie's mom. Okay, so those are really your only 2 adult characters that are present for a majority of the film. Mitchie's dad I don't really count because he's barely in the film at all. But those 2 characters alone, even though we don't see them as much as we see like the kid characters, they bring a level of like realism to their characters, like reality that grounds them enough in the scene and grounds you as a viewer enough in the scene that you like buy completely everything that they're doing. Despite the fact that this movie is a little ridiculous and has this level of camp, no pun intended, to it, at least even when they do goofy things, like, which happens occasionally with their characters, they may do or say something slightly goofy, but they at least are grounded in enough of like a realism that it doesn't feel quite as disconnected as when the kid characters do something outrageously goofy, and then you're just like, oh, that's so cringe. You know what I mean? Like, they can do the adults can pull the goofy stuff off without it being cringe, where I feel like the kids haven't quite figured that balance out, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's where the half point comes from. But other than that, Mitchie is so hard to root for sometimes, and we talked about that a little bit in plot with the fact that like she just lies, and that's why she has all these conflicts, is because she just continues to lie through the whole thing. It's really difficult to root for a protagonist when your protagonist lies at every chance, because she's so convinced that like there's a part in the movie where Caitlin, she like gets in trouble or whatever, and she has to help out in the kitchen, and then she catches Mitchie in the kitchen or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh, you lied, and I can't believe it, blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, how long did you think you could pull this off or whatever? And Mitchie goes, longer than this. And you're just like, yeah, but like Caitlin's question is valid, because how long did you think you were going to get through all of camp and go home and everybody was going to think all of the things that you said were true? Like, eventually there are gonna be like cracks in the persona. Let's say you started a relationship with Shane Gray, eventually he's gonna find out that your mom is not the CEO of whatever records in China or whatever it is. Like, I think the thing is that Mitchie spends so much time and effort trying to forge relationships and friendships with people. And it's like, why are you doing that much work if you don't want a relationship with them after camp? Because if you do want a relationship with them after camp, you should realize that the lies that you're telling are going to fall apart at some point. So it's like, she's obviously, either she's thinking in the long term, which she's doing a bad job if she's doing that, or she's not thinking in the long term. And if that's the case, then her effort makes no sense. So like, Mitchie is just a very difficult character to like root for. And it's not like you necessarily wish for her downfall, but it's like almost every
did.
Okay. Well, it's like almost every decision that she makes, you're like, why? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? So Mitchie is a difficult character to root for. Tess is kind of framed as this like stereotypical bully villain. And I think part of the reason that she is actually a pretty decent villain character is because of the fact that she does the classic thing where she's like, I'm telling the truth. And she does, but we've discussed this in the past, but like telling the truth without tact is just cruelty. And she embodies that over and over and over, which is why I think of all of the like kid characters, I feel like Tess is probably the most consistent, at least. We may not really understand her motivations, and I think her character arc kind of falls apart at the end. I agree with what you said. But of all the kid characters, I think she is the most consistent because of that fact. Oh, I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. Okay, sure, but you're also a jerk while you do it, and that makes you a bully. Like, and I think that's a lesson that a lot of people have to learn. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people be like, oh, people think I'm rude, but I'm just blunt. I just tell it like it is. And part of growing up is realizing that you don't always have to tell it like it is, or you can figure out how to tell the truth in a way that's not harmful to people. Right. And so Tess doesn't have that yet. She's fully content just being a jerk, even if what she's saying is true. Another thing about Mitchie is that she has this whole I'm not like other girls thing that she tries so hard to like grip. But again, it's inconsistent with her character, because if you're not like other girls, why do you want so badly to be in with the populars? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
And we don't even get any indication that Tess and her group are popular at all.
True.
Nobody else gives them
Everybody else at camp is kind of just like, they're jerks, so we stay away from them. Right. So it's not like people are like begging to be at their table. We don't get that sort of indication.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part doesn't make sense. Another thing about Mitchie's lying is like there's this whole, I guess it's like the big conflict before the final jam, okay, where Tess plants a necklace in some of Mitchie's things, and then she's like, my necklace went missing, blah, 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 or bracelet or something.
It's her like, little charm bracelet
she plants it in Mitchie's things, and then she's like, look, I found it in Mitchie's stuff. It's obviously she did it or whatever. And so Brown confronts Mitchie and Caitlin or whatever in the kitchen, and you know, it's the one time that I can recall that Tess lies about Mitchie. And so she lies, and then Mitchie goes, she's lying. And I'm thinking to myself, girl, you've been lying this whole film. If I was Brown, I probably too would not necessarily take your word here.
It's like the boy that cried wolf.
Yeah, it's like, you've been lying all film. I can't trust you now when you say she's lying about this. So like, it just seemed like maybe it's just like a poor character choice. Maybe this would actually go back to more like plot storytelling because it's like the writing. But like, Mitchie, you have proven that you are a liar, and everybody's mad at you right now for it. You can't now be like, I'm telling the truth. Like, you've been proven to not be doing that the whole time you've been at camp. So it's just because of that, and because Mitchie she is the character, like she's the main character. It's just so difficult. I don't even really have a lot to say about like Shane or Caitlin or anything like that. I think they're kind of like just their kind of characters. Like, I feel like Shane Gray's subplot is the screen time for it is just so much less than like Mitchie's. So like, I don't even really like, it doesn't bother me necessarily, but it also doesn't like make me feel like that's the good part of the film. You know, it's just kind of there, like it fills time. But one more note and I will be done with characters. We know this happens because we've seen it. I call it the Grease effect, but all of the backup dancers that are like the they're like the other campers, but like they're the actual dancers that like fill the space in like the big dance numbers and stuff like that. And they're good dancers. I'm not trying to say that they're untalented, but they are obviously 30 and up. Yeah. And it's very evident in the song that Tess sings, and it's like Mitchie and Peggy and Ella are the like backup dancers, and they're wearing like this silver space girl dresses or whatever. And the dancers, and I'm looking at these
it's dancers like a 40-year-old woman.
It's like, that is your mom, Tess. Yeah. And so it just makes me think like, it's obvious that Disney has an eye for talented youth. So why could we not hire I'm sure there are plenty of teenage dancers out there that would have loved to have a moment to be a dancer in Camp Rock. Were they just dancers already at Disney's disposal?
I guarantee it was labor laws.
Maybe.
Because kids can't work for a certain amount of time.
Sure.
And
so they were like, oh, we got to fill all these people in with 18 and ups, and, you know, for whatever reason.
But even still, there are countless 18, 19, 20-year-olds that look young.
Yep.
That would kill to have a dancing
And again,
role.
I'm not trying to say that a 45-year-old can't be a dancer, but in a movie
Put
on
them
the
in
Disney
the back.
Channel, well, in a movie on Disney Channel about 15 and 16-year-olds, you can't let that be seen too much.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it to me, it's like it's jarring.
I think otherwise you have to do what Grease did, and literally your whole cast
is 30,
and we'll all suspend our disbelief like we do in actual theater.
Correct.
Because we know that person on the stage is not 16, they're 25, but they all look the same age. Kind of like, I think we did mention that in Mean Girls. Like,
yeah, I think so.
The musical. Because they did that. They cast everybody, and that's definitely a grown man, but you know what? He still looks equal age with everybody else.
Right. And I think that's also another thing about the difference in medium between film and theater is even if you're front row like in a theater show, you have some distance, but when you're zooming in on a character on a screen and this is now their framing, you are way up I'm closer to Demi Lovato than I'll ever be in real life, you know? And so that happens sometimes even with secondary background dancer characters. And that's what happened this time. Yeah. And it's that scene specifically that I think some of the bigger group numbers, it's fine and passable because you're not getting close-up zoom-ins, but you're getting these like zoom-ins of Tess moving across these dancers. And so you're getting fairly close to these dancers and you're like, these are moms. You know what I mean? Yeah. So all that.
Maybe her mom hired her dancers.
Maybe that's what it is.
Perform for Tess.
Yeah. So all that to say, 0.5 point out of 3 for characters.
Alrighty. So our next category is aesthetics and a total possible score of 2. I give this 0.5 point out of 2. And again, in the context that this is a TV movie for kids, I give this 0.5 point. Overall, the aesthetics are just really goofy in this movie. There's nothing that's so visually jarring that you have to turn off the film and make it unwatchable. But there is a lot that's pretty corny. The opening montage with Demi Lovato changing clothes, so stereotypical of like the 2000s like clothing montage. The way that they have a picture on the TV and it's of Joe Jonas and the big text on the bottom that says scandal. Like we hear them talking about there being a scandal, but we got to spoon feed it to these kids.
Yeah.
There were a lot of really awkward editing cuts in the movie. I was like, they would just cut from one like shot to the next and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a little whiplash there watching it. Some of the sets really don't feel like a camp. Like the fact that all of the table settings at meals, it's like a full like I think they are plastic, but they look like we have full ceramic plates and cups and saucers under the coffee
catering
mugs.
Doesn't go halfway.
I mean, but this is camp. Like they should be having like the plastic lunch trays and like or aluminum lunch trays and like, you know, it's just like even the cabins, they look like Airbnbs. They don't look like a bunk room with, you know, all these kids in like camper style cabins. Just a lot of the like I already mentioned, the spaghetti noodles with no sauce on it. I almost said socks. I don't know why. I almost read my note here. The whole part when Demi Lovato has flour on her face, like it was eye rolling, like bad. Like we couldn't come up with any other way to like have her not be visible. Oh wow, you're a totally different person with flour on your face. I can't tell who you are. Like, is Joe Jonas an AI face detector? Like you can't read her face now. The hip hop dance class was so awkward. and completely pointless. There was no point to having that in the movie.
It's one of the greatest memes that came from that movie, though.
Everybody grab a hat and a microphone. Why? We need to grab a hat. Everybody puts one on and he sticks his in his back pocket and then they just start magically knowing choreography and dancing together. It did nothing to move the plot. It didn't, like, it'd be one thing if they started dancing and then all of a sudden, like, Demi Lovato's this amazing dancer and like Joe Jonas is like, oh my gosh, I'm in love. But like, no, it's just like,
but she's not the girl with the voice that he knows of.
Right. It was just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in a movie. Like you mentioned, I also counted there were clearly grown adults as campers in this. The fact that Joe Jonas can sing two voices at the same time when he's playing
when he's harmonizing with himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's playing his guitar and then all of a sudden you hear two of him.
Whoa, bro, where have you been hiding that talent?
That's a big talent. The slow-mo montage with the fake guitar playing, like
at the end when Peggy's doing her song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Her hands aren't even forming anything. Demi Lovato's dance moves at the end are pretty terrible.
But Mimi.
Very Mimi.
The Disneys.
One reason I didn't take off full points is I do think you have to give some credit that this film visually is kind of a time capsule of the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like the clothes that everybody's wearing, the wardrobe that everybody's wearing. It's definitely a time capsule of like early Disney, not early, but like of Disney movies at that time.
Yeah.
It really is kind of like a visual time capsule of that. And then also the last Tess's final jam number with all those mirrors. I do think it is actually impressive that I couldn't. Now Jamie French probably could, but I couldn't find.
Shout out to Jamie French. Yeah, we love your videos.
Yeah, come be on our podcast.
Yeah,
but I couldn't find a camera in the mirror. So now she probably could because she has a knack for finding those things. But just in casual watching without like slowing down the frame rate or anything, it was not obvious that like you're seeing crew members or cameras or things like that in those mirrors, which is genuinely impressive because that's very, very difficult to do. And the way that they kind of angled them on the stage, I think helped with that. And I feel like that was a very strategic number. Now, why she had mirrors while she's singing that song made no point. It didn't make any sense. But the fact that they didn't have any camera reflections or like negative reflections, it didn't reflect the audience. You didn't see these weird audience members making weird faces or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those two things were kind of impressive. And then in general, visually, this is a kids movie on Disney Channel in the early 2000s. So I can't be overly harsh on the visuals, but it's just bad. I mean, it really is just bad. Like, you could not put this next to any other film and not go, yeah, it's pretty bad. So that's why I gave it half a point. I felt like I was trying to take it in context. And then also, like, in aesthetics, the music, like the vocals of the music and the instrumentation and stuff, it really wasn't awful. There wasn't a single song that I was like, oh, this is terrible. Like this person can't sing. Like, why do they have this? Like, some of them by plot really didn't make any sense, but it wasn't anything that was so jarring you'd have to like fast forward through it on a rewatch. So
sure,
half a point.
Okay, so for aesthetics, for me, out of 2 points, I also gave it half a point. I think that the sets, while a little bit unrealistic, I actually enjoyed the way that they were dressed for the most part. I liked that there were these like little character touches to these cabins. Sure, maybe they're not super realistic cabins, but maybe if this is as elite of a camp as they kind of make it seem that like you have to be super rich to go there, then it's like, okay, I'll buy that like these kids like kind of took this extra effort to kind of like decorate their spaces. Like there's posters above Tess's bed or whatever, whatever it is. Like I kind of liked those little personal touches. They don't feature them very closely, but it just gave a little level of like, I guess, like just care from like the prop and set dressing team, which I really enjoyed. I agree that the songs generally are fine. I do think we talked about earlier, they're too long for the movie edit, but as songs on their own, they're really not bad musically. Some of them may not necessarily be like my style or taste, but it's not because they're like just bad songs. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing about them that's like, oh my gosh, please skip this or whatever. The hip hop dance class is atrocious. It just is. I'm sorry. The choreography in general, I think, is very, it's very juvenile, and I get it. It's for young audience members, but for the most part, and I don't mean juvenile, like obviously it's age appropriate, but it also just seems, it doesn't, it almost feels like the kind of dance that you like make up with your cousin when you're like 11 and you find a song that's just like you guys think it's like the best song ever, so you're going to create a dance routine for it in your bedroom one day. Like that's what it kind of feels like, the choreography, and you're like, I know an adult choreographed this.
Right.
Why does it feel like a lot of the choreography was made by a 15-year-old?
Right. And it's like Joe Jonas is this pop star who you would think in like Justin Bieber learned choreography when he was a teenage pop star.
Yeah.
You would think he would be teaching a dance class of choreography that he has learned from his choreographer. Yeah. And no, it's like the most awkward.
And if you want to argue and say, well, Joe Jonas is a musician, he's not a dancer. Okay, but if Shane Gray, the character, is supposed to be a dancer, then...
Or if he's not a dancer, why is he teaching the class?
Exactly. It's like, then have him teach a guitar class instead.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So it feels like a little bit of a disconnect there. Also, the continuity. Guys, where was your script supervisor? How come every other time it cuts back to Mitchie in the boat when she and Shane are talking back and forth, her hair is over, and then it's behind, and then it's over, and then it's behind. And like... that's something that a script supervisor should have caught. Hey, can we pause real quick and move her hair and then continue the scene? Like, that is the job of the script supervisor. And that was not the only time that this happened.
Maybe they didn't have one.
It would be hard to do a film at this caliber without one, but maybe that's what happened.
No, I'm sure they had one. But
they was sleeping that day.
Maybe.
Didn't have any coffee that morning. Mm-hmm. And so what happens, and I don't know if it's the two of these things together, but there are a lot of weird jump cuts that happen in the editing. I don't know if it's because of the continuity, and they're like, I don't know how to piece these things together, these takes together, because they look so different, even though they're supposed to be the same. Maybe that's why we got some of the weird cuts that we did. Maybe the editor was in the editing booth crying his eyes out at 2 a.m. because he was trying to figure out a solution to this, and he just didn't have. So either both of those things or one of those things was at fault, but I think it ended up with some really, really weird like cuts back and forth. There are so many shots that are framed up where the characters are very obviously standing like this next to each other.
Yeah.
And I have had my fair share of set experience, so I understand that has to happen sometimes, but there are also lenses that you can change on a camera to fix things like that, so that even if you are standing like this, it doesn't look like they're standing like this.
Or it's because you're filming a close-up and you need their faces in the frame a certain way, not when you're zoomed out.
Right, but there should not be an establishing shot and Joe Jonas and the man that plays Brown are standing like this, and Brown's like whispering in his ear right up against him, and his lips are in Joe Jonas's hair, and you're like, bro, get away from him.
Back up.
Chill. Like,
you're being a creepy uncle.
Yeah, or like when Mitchie and Caitlin first meet, their very first meeting, and and there's like the iconic like, check me out, and then she's like, and Mitchie's like, wow, you're really good, or whatever, and Mitchie is standing behind Caitlin like this, and you're like, why are you standing like that? And it's because Demi Lovato was told to stand that way.
Right.
But why'd you frame it up that way?
Why did you zoom out so much that we as an audience know how close they are?
Yeah, and it's like, it's one thing to, I understand like having to trick a camera, but you're not tricking anybody right now.
Right.
You're just making us go, what? These people have no concept of personal space, I guess. So, all of that to say, I think that a lot of good memes did come out of some of the editing, though. The she's really good and the Disneys and like some of that I think are great iconic memes that I don't want to glance over. But did they make for good cinema? No.
They did not.
So 0.5 point out of 2.
All right. So our next category, as we said in our introduction, personal taste and preference. Only 2 points allowed for our personal taste. I gave this a big, surprising 0 out of 2. This is one of the cringiest movies I have ever seen. The songs are annoying. They take up way too much of the runtime. The acting is corny and the editing is jarring. I already don't like the Jonas Brothers, and Demi Lovato's just meh for me, and I was bummed I didn't even get to watch the Camp Rock chant meme. So
that's in the second one. We gotta watch the second one.
0 out of 2.
Okay.
I watched the whole movie waiting for them to do their little
Camp Rock
clappy thing, and I missed it. I was like,
I got gypped.
yeah.
Now you have a motivation to watch the second one.
Maybe I don't. So,
Okay. So for me, for personal taste and preference, I give this 2 points out of 2. And I will fully admit this is based on my nostalgia and my attachment to the Jonas Brothers and this era of Disney Channel. I will fully admit it. There is no logic behind this. It is purely emotional and nostalgic. But 2 out of 2 points. I will watch Camp Rock for many years to come. And I know it's bad, but I'm going to watch it anyway.
We ought to replace that poster with a Camp Rock poster.
Camp Rock or whatever.
We'll just tape Joe Jonas's face up there.
With the Lost Boys, he's standing right here.
Yeah, there we go.
But
only him with his Shane Gray hair.
Yeah, with the swoopy,
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing I did mean, like, in aesthetics, like, even the hairstyles are so, like, early 2000s. Early mid-2000s. All right, so our next category is creativity. So total possible score of 1. I actually gave this 0 out of 1 point. I know that a lot of people think this is iconic, but I do disagree. I do think this film is age appropriate and it's nostalgic and iconic for some viewers. But I also think this is just trying to ride off of High School Musical's coattails and be a film launch for the Jonas Brothers. I don't think the memes that have developed from this equate to creativity. I think it's just I think it holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. But as a film, objectively, I don't think it does anything really new. And I don't think it has the credit of like pioneering Disney Channel like stars into the music industry or musicians into the film industry in the way that some other prior films were able to accomplish that. So I think objectively, yeah, it's really memey. Yeah, people say it's iconic. Like, it's part of my childhood. It's a time capsule. Like, I mean, I do think to an extent it is a time capsule of that era of Disney, but I don't think that equates to creativity. I think that the cringe and the memes are what are iconic rather than the film itself. So that's why I didn't give it any points, and I might get a lot of hate for that. But I also think that it's a little bit subjective when you talk about like, well, it's just become so iconic. But I think that what's become iconic is the way the internet now makes fun of this film, not necessarily the film itself has become an icon. So
okay. So I have a slightly different perspective. So I gave this 0.5 point out of 1 because I don't think it's necessarily super new, but I wanted to acknowledge the fact that, and while this era of Disney was admittedly started, in my opinion, by High School Musical and then High School Musical 2, I think it was nice to see that Disney did another similar in vibe, but now we have a new location and completely new actors, so we're not getting High School Musical 3 right out of the gate, and it's still being the level of success that you would hope for, so that you knew that it was just the period of Disney was successful at that time. And I think this is even true of the shows that were being played on Disney Channel at around this time, which to my recollection, were shows like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and Hannah Montana. And so other shows that I think are still talked about today in like pop culture. It was just a good era of Disney Channel. And I think they took a risk with Camp Rock. And while I don't necessarily think it paid off in regards to, is this the best film that we've put out in this era? But in regards to audience and fandom, I think it was maybe not as successful as Camp Rock, but it was successful enough that Disney was like, okay, we must be doing something right for our audience at the time. So while it's not necessarily iconic in the sake of like, this is a film that I think everybody should see, even if it's not necessarily good, I think it's iconic in the sense of like, if you were in that demographic and this was the kind of thing that you liked, this is another one of those things that you would have probably liked if you weren't already in the craze of it. And I think that, and admittedly, you know, since I've become an adult, I'm not necessarily in like the know of like whatever Disney Channel is doing now. I have no idea what's on the Disney Channel these days. But I think when this was going on, kind of that 2000s decade, it was just like the marketing was nice, and like you could go to Walmart and get a Camp Rock shirt for your 9-year-old. It was like merch like that was accessible. You didn't have to go to specialty stores or go straight to like the Disney store online to get merch for Camp Rock. You could go anywhere and get merch for Camp Rock. And I, you know, aside from maybe shows like Bluey, I don't, even when I walk into like Walmart or something like that, I'm not seeing shows I don't really recognize on shirts for kids nowadays. I don't know, like, I don't see that sort of thing. Whereas I think in the 2000s, it was like Disney just went all in. They're like, all right, we're going to commit to this, and we're going to make all these t-shirts, and we're going to make bags. And like, I had a Camp Rock messenger bag when I was redacted. So you know what I mean though, because it was like I went into like the Limited 2 or whatever store,
right?
Or, you know, and it was hanging on the rack, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could use that. I wish, I don't know what I use that for, but like and so my parents,
you went to school with it.
Yeah, or whatever. It's like, so my parents bought me a Camp Rock messenger bag, and I felt cool for a year with that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, and like maybe this is just me sounding like an old fuddy-duddy, but like there was almost something charming about being a youngster and like just having that like cringy interest. And I feel like kids today don't really have that in the same capacity, or maybe it looks different than how it did. But I feel like there's nothing wrong with like a 12-year-old just enjoying something cringy because it's entertaining. And so I think that, yes, it is cringy and it's not good, but like, it was great for those 12-year-olds, you know? And so if that's a good memory for them, then I'm gonna let them have it. And I'm talking to myself, you know, I'm just gonna let myself enjoy it because it was there for me when I wanted something silly to watch, and like I didn't want to use my brain or whatever. And it's like, you know, I learn all the songs and I learned some of the dance moves. It was just because it was fun. Yes, it was cringe. We were cringe, but we were free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like some of that is lost in today's world, and maybe it's because my perspective is different and I'm just not following it anymore. But all that to say, 0.5 point out of 1 for creativity. So what does that bring your overall score to?
So my final score for Camp Rock, the classic 2008 Disney Channel original movie, is 1 out of 10.
Wow! Mine is 4, and I know I will fully admit that
I think that's fine.
3 of those 4 points is because of the nostalgia and attachment that I have. So 4 out of 10.
Technically only 2.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
2. Yeah.
All right. Any
right.
final thoughts before we go into lightning round?
No.
I'm so excited for this.
I think this is a good kickoff. I mean, it's July. It's summer.
Yeah.
Summertime
Go to Camp
camping.
Rock.
Go to Camp Rock for the summer.
Okay. Favorite scene?
Oh my gosh.
You have to pick one.
I have to?
You have to pick one. Even if it's like funny, like you like it because you think it's funny or cringe.
I don't even remember the scenes. Favorite scene?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. This is like picking your favorite rat poison.
I prefer this kind of arsenic in my tea.
Yeah, exactly. The end credits.
Okay.
No, I don't know, honestly. I'm trying to think of the musical numbers and don't like any of those. I mean, probably the beginning when Demi Lovato doesn't even eat the omelet. And it's like, these are so good, Mom. Her favorite line in the whole movie is, this is really good. These are really good. She's really good. Like, so yeah, probably when she didn't even, that was my first introduction to the movie. I'm like, she didn't even eat the omelet. It's literally still attached in one piece on her plate. And she's like, these omelets are great, Mom, or like whatever she says. And I was like,
I smelled them and I just knew.
What am I getting myself into? Yeah. So probably that one.
So I think my favorite scene, it's a very ridiculous one, but it's when
the hip hop dance class.
No, but it does involve Shane Gray. It's when Shane Gray's like on the phone and he's like, he says something like, I walked in some grass. I looked at a tree. It's been 3 hours. I need hair product.
That is pretty good.
So funny.
That is pretty good.
So that's probably my favorite scene. I just, it pops into my head sometimes, like those lines.
Yeah.
Okay, least favorite scene. What do you think is the worst scene in the whole
The
movie?
hip hop dance class. Okay. That was so bad. Also, I didn't like the scene when I really didn't like I really didn't like the scene where Joe Jonas sings 3 verses and 3 choruses and a bridge of one song. It took so long.
Sure.
And it did nothing. It was not, there was no point to that whole song. That I really didn't like it because I felt like I was dying on the vine, like watching it.
I'm going to say that my least favorite scene is the scene where Tess is performing and they're all in the silver space girl.
That's pretty
dresses.
bad too.
And it's just everything about it is like
I think I blacked out during that scene.
That's fair.
So
okay, if you have to pick a favorite song, what is your favorite song?
I don't remember all the songs.
Then you can disconnect it from the scene if it's like, well, I thought the song was good, but the scene was bad.
I really didn't dislike this, like, Mitchie's song at the end. I really didn't dislike that song.
Yeah.
I thought it was an okay song.
Yeah.
And I kind of remember that you could audition with that song on the American Idol experience at Disney World. At one point, that was one of the songs you could pick. Didn't you know someone who did that?
I do.
Okay.
I feel like I have to lore drop now. Should I lore drop in the episode? Okay.
No, just leave it up to their imagination.
I cut it out. Okay, so my favorite song is the final song where everybody does at the very end, and it's like like we rock, we rock on, whatever. It's just like so fun to see everybody all together in the big ensemble, and so that's probably my
very happy
song.
for you enjoying that moment.
Okay. All right. Next question. Favorite and least favorite characters.
Oh gosh, I have to pick a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Least favorite, Joe Jonas.
Okay.
He's so obnoxious.
I like how Joe Jonas is the character. Like
he is. That's an accurate representation of Joe Jonas. I've seen him in interviews. That's literally him. He was playing himself.
That's probably why they were probably like, which one of the Jonas Brothers are we going to feature for the role of Shane Gray? And somebody was like, well, we know who would be the easiest to get.
Who basically wouldn't even have to act. He just has to be himself and talk about touching grass. Like.
Okay, so least favorite,
Joe
Shane
Jonas.
/ Joe Jonas.
Yeah. Favorite. The youngest Jonas brother.
Okay. Nick.
Yeah, with the curly hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I feel like character, technically, yes, because the other Jonas brother is an idiot and is annoying.
Yeah.
But they did him so dirty.
I know.
I almost want to say him because my man didn't deserve that.
He did not.
Did not.
Justice for Kevin.
And his name is Kevin, which is already like a memed name anyways.
That's his
so they
real
like
name.
I know, but then they like memed him even further by making him the dumb one.
Yeah.
So
Justice for Kevin.
So I would say either one of the other Jonas Brothers,
Okay.
which I don't like the Jonas Brothers at all, but the context of this question, and they have minimal screen time, so there's not much for me to hate about them. So,
okay. So my favorite and least favorite character. My least favorite character is probably Mitchie because she makes me want to bash my head against the wall. She's a close second to Joe Jonas for me. My favorite character is probably Mitchie's mom, to be honest.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
She's a pretty good mom. And I am glad to have a Disney movie where both parents are kind and supportive instead of there being like strained relationships that either don't exist or one parent's out of the picture or like whatever, so
yeah,
it's nice.
I also like that she doesn't have this like crazy unrealistic reaction when she finds out that Mitchie's lied this whole time. Mm-hmm. She's not like, you're leaving camp forever,
right?
Like,
she's kind of just like, you shouldn't have done that and here's why, like kind of thing. So yeah, I think her. Okay, at Camp Rock, who do you want to bunk with? Here are your options.
Oh no.
Connect
it's a living nightmare.
Connect 3, aka the Jonas Brothers.
The Jonas Brothers.
Or Tess's cabin with Peggy and Ella. Or
is Tess there too?
Yes.
Okay.
Tess, Peggy, and Ella.
Okay.
Or Mitchie and Caitlin. Or you can pick somebody else that I didn't name. But they have to be a character that exists in the universe. That's at camp.
Okay, of those choices, I think I would actually pick the Jonas Brothers because I think they would leave me alone.
Same answer.
However, if I could pick a different character, just
you can.
for interesting, I'd pick the uncle.
Okay.
Because I think he would also leave me alone.
Yeah, and also
he seems like a chill guy.
I would probably pick Connie's mom because she's in the kitchen most of the day.
True.
So it's like I could just be chilling. Probably the same with Brown.
Exactly.
He's probably just out and about at camp. So it's like the only time you probably ever see him is when he comes in to sleep.
Best choice.
Okay.
Mitchie's dad.
He's not at camp.
You said I get to pick?
I said he has to exist in the world and be at camp.
Oh, and be at camp. You don't know he's not at camp?
Yeah, he runs a hardware store. Mitchie says that. She says, they're like, oh, who's your dad? And she's like, oh, he runs a hardware store. And they're like, oh. And she's like, oh, but my mom. And that's the first of the lies.
She does say that.
So he's running a hardware store. That's why he's not at camp.
Okay, well, he just pops up at the end.
Yeah.
Can't be a long drive then.
So I think that those are good answers.
Okay,
last question. I know we didn't talk about High School Musical. This is not an episode about High School Musical. But you think this is better or worse than High School Musical?
Oh, definitely worse.
I agree.
Yeah.
I feel like High School Musical took a huge risk and had a huge payoff for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like Camp Rock was also a risk, but just not as high and just didn't have the same charm, I think.
I also think the cast for High School Musical was so much more talented. And it's almost like they were the first string and then Camp Rock got the second string. And that's no disrespect to, I mean, as much as I don't like them, but that's no disrespect to the Jonas Brothers or Demi Lovato. Like, I think they give their best effort, but it's almost like the High School Musical cast came from musical theater backgrounds and the Camp Rock cast came from pop star backgrounds, which doesn't really translate well to kind of more of a musical theater setting or like a TV musical setting.
Sure.
So
that's fair. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
I don't think so. This movie's so cringe. I can't believe you made me watch it.
I feel like you say that about a lot of things, though.
I think that's why people listen to our podcast, I hope. I hope they're not just, like, annoyed with me the whole time.
Yeah.
No, but if you're a Camp Rock fan, great. Good for you.
Great.
You can come at me. I really don't care. My opinion still stands, but I am glad that there are. I mean, Tori's a Camp Rock fan. She's not mad at me, but I am glad. It is fun to watch things that you thought were cringe while, like, as an adult, like, fully knowing that this was cringe, but this is also something I watched on repeat all the time. I'm actually thinking, like, doing this, like, recording session, I just thought of a movie that I watched to death when I was in middle school, and it is probably one of the cringiest movies on the planet. So we might have to do that for
I was gonna say you should pick it, and then it'll be like a flip of this episode for us.
Yeah. So
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We hope you had a good time, because we know that we did. If you have an idea of what we should review next, do not forget that you can leave us a comment or use our suggestion box on our website, which is lionandmousepodcast.com. On our website, you can also find links to our show notes, Patreon, socials, and if you could please review this episode wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. It helps us reach as many people as we can, because the algorithm likes us when you do that. We appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you in the next one.